On a quiet summer afternoon in August 2014, a tragic and unusual accident shook the small Vermont town of Shoreham. It wasn't a high-speed chase or a fiery wreck, but something far more unexpected, a grain silo collapse that claimed the life of a hard-working truck driver just trying to finish his route. According to reports, a 56-year-old man from Benson, Vermont, was operating a tractor trailer and had backed his rig up to the silo at a farm property to deliver or load grain. These kinds of deliveries are routine in rural agricultural towns, and the man was likely no stranger to the process. But on this particular day, things went horribly wrong. As the driver maneuvered near the silo, something caused the structure to give way. Without warning, the massive metal tower full of tons of grain collapsed directly onto the cab of the truck. The force of the impact was catastrophic. The truck was crushed beneath the weight of the silo and the grain it held, leaving virtually no chance for the driver to escape or survive. Emergency crews were called immediately, and responders from local fire departments, including Middlebury, Orwell, and Shoreham, rushed to the scene. They faced a harrowing task, digging through the crumpled remains of the truck and the mountain of grain to reach the victim. Despite their best efforts, the man was pronounced dead at the scene. The incident drew attention from news outlets like Mass Live and local Vermont newspapers, largely because of how rare and devastating a silo collapse like this is. Normally, silos are sturdy, built to withstand both internal pressure from the grain and external conditions like wind or snow. But if they're old, structurally compromised, or accidentally struck by heavy equipment, they can become ticking time bombs. In this case, while the exact cause of the collapse was not immediately known, investigators suspected either a structural failure due to aging materials or potential accidental contact from the trailer while backing up. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration was reportedly notified and may have opened an investigation into the accident, though no criminal activity was suspected. The loss hit the local farming community hard. In places like Shoreham, people know their neighbors, and a tragedy like this doesn't go unnoticed. It served as a grim reminder of the dangers that come with agricultural work. Jobs that seem simple on the surface, but often involve massive, unforgiving machinery and split-second decisions. There's something deeply sobering about the idea that one misstep, one weakened bolt, or one awkward turn could lead to something so final. While there wasn't any viral footage or dramatic news segment about this specific accident, its absence from the national spotlight didn't make it any less tragic. These are the kinds of real-life incidents that happen quietly in the background, away from camera flashes and headlines, yet they speak volumes about the hidden risks of everyday labor. Moving forward, one can only hope that stricter safety checks, better silo maintenance, and increased awareness will prevent future collapses like this one. Because for all the romanticism people place on country life, red barns, golden fields, and blue skies, there's also the sobering reality that farm equipment and infrastructure can be just as deadly as any urban construction site. In this Vermont town, a single moment of structural failure turned an ordinary workday into a heartbreaking tragedy. In 2018, a 22-year-old woman stepped into the heart of the African wilderness, expecting wonder, never imagining it would end in horror. What began as an innocent visit to a game reserve near Pretoria, South Africa, slowly twisted into something else entirely. She hadn't even planned to be there. She was simply accompanying a friend on an informal visit to a lion sanctuary nestled inside the 200-acre Dinokeng Big 5 Game Reserve. Her friend had arranged to interview the camp's manager. For her, it was just a side trip, a chance to snap a few photos, breathe the wild air, and stand in awe of creatures most people only see on screens. The sanctuary was home to Kevin Richardson, the famed lion whisperer, whose near mystical connection to his lions had captivated the world. She must have felt safe, even inspired. After all, these weren't just wild lions, they were his lions, trained, handled, adored. And on that day, as the sun filtered through the bush and the sky stretched wide and calm, 3 of them were out on a routine walk. Richardson, as always, walked nearby. Nothing seemed out of place, until it was. One of the lionesses spotted an impala, a blur of muscle and bone. The antelope bolted into the open. That single flicker of movement was enough to trigger everything. The lioness charged, ears flat, eyes locked, body alive with instinct. The chase was on. No one realized where she was headed. The impala darted, vanished into the bush. The lioness, completely engulfed in the hunt, gave chase, running full speed through the reserve. 2, maybe 2.5 kilometers, barely minutes for an animal like her. In the madness of pursuit, the boundaries between predator and everything else fell away. And then she saw something. The woman had wandered just outside the fenced area, maybe a few steps too far, maybe just close enough to get a better photo. She never saw the lioness, but the lioness saw her. There was no time to react, no time to shout or run or understand. The lioness lunged, and in an instant the scene transformed, tranquility to terror. The sound of paws on dirt, the weight of 300 pounds of muscle, the crunch of impact. She was knocked down, mauled with staggering force before anyone could blink. Her friend watched in frozen disbelief, unable to move, powerless as teeth met flesh, as claws tore through skin. The lioness wasn't enraged. She wasn't confused. She was still in hunt mode, operating on the oldest instinct written into the bones of predators. It ended quickly, brutally. Blood stained the dust. The woman's body lay twisted and motionless beneath the lioness's heaving chest. The breathless stillness of the African bush returned, but not the kind that brings peace. Paramedics rushed to the scene. Sirens pierced the silence, wheels kicking up red earth. But by the time they reached her, there was nothing left to save. Her injuries were beyond anything medicine could undo. Nick Dahlman, the paramedic spokesman, would later call the scene horrific. Kevin Richardson was shattered. He posted a message filled with grief. "I am devastated. My heart goes out to this young woman's family." He explained that alerts had been sent out. The team had followed protocol. This was never supposed to happen, but it had. Dino King's management clarified the facts, insisting the lioness wasn't one of the park's free-roaming wild lions. She was a sanctuary lion, monitored, familiar. Still, none of that mattered. A young woman was gone, her life taken in a matter of seconds by a creature she never even had a chance to fear. The tragedy sent ripples through Richardson's world. Not long before, supermodel Cara Delevingne had posed with one of his lions in a glossy photo shoot, calling it humbling, a beautiful, intimate experience. But the intimacy of wild things comes with a price, and sometimes that price is blood. Visitors still come. Volunteers still arrive to walk the reserve and learn from Kevin. The allure is powerful. The thrill of being close to lions, of brushing against danger while believing you're safe, still draws people in. But for anyone paying attention, that young woman's death is the reminder beneath it all. No matter how experienced the handler, how well trained the animal, how calm the moment may seem, lions do not hesitate. They don't pause. They don't forgive distractions. Out here, there are no guarantees. There is only instinct. And whether you're a photographer or a whisperer or an unsuspecting visitor, if you cross the line at the wrong time, you don't get to cross back. Dallas Big Country McCarver was a rising titan in the bodybuilding world, a walking wall of muscle who, at just 26 years old, had already made it to the Mr. Olympia stage and was considered one of the sport's brightest stars. Towering at 6 feet 1 inch and weighing well over 300 pounds in his off-season, he had the kind of size and symmetry that made jaws drop and judges take notice. But in August 2017, the bodybuilding community was rocked when news broke that Dallas had died suddenly in his Florida home. At first, reports pointed to a tragic accident involving choking on food while eating alone late at night. It sounded almost too strange to be true. His girlfriend at the time, WWE star Dana Brooke, mentioned that she had spoken to him just before the incident, and his last words to her were simply, "I love you. Goodbye." Those chilling words would echo across the internet as fans and fitness buffs tried to make sense of what had happened. The initial speculation was that Dallas, perhaps rushing his meal as bodybuilders often do to hit their calorie targets, had choked and collapsed. Emergency responders arrived and CPR was performed, but it was too late. The 911 call later revealed that his roommate found him unconscious, with food in his throat and insulin nearby, a clue that made the incident seem more complex than a simple choking accident. As shocking as the headlines were, the deeper truth turned out to be even more sobering. Months later, the autopsy report painted a very different picture. Yes, food was found in his airway, but it wasn't the primary cause of death. The real culprit was an acute cardiac event, a massive heart failure brought on by a dangerously enlarged heart. To put it in perspective, the average human heart weighs around 300 grams. Dallas's heart weighed a staggering 833 grams, nearly 3 times the normal size. His organs were also significantly enlarged, and his arteries showed heavy plaque buildup. All signs pointed to the long-term effects of extreme physical stress and likely the heavy use of performance-enhancing substances. Sadly, this isn't an unfamiliar story in the bodybuilding world, where the relentless drive to be bigger, leaner, and more defined often pushes athletes into dangerous territory. Dallas was known for his intense work ethic and larger-than-life persona, but even his close friends admitted that he pushed himself harder than most, often ignoring signs of fatigue or physical distress. In hindsight, his massive size and rapid growth weren't just the result of hard work and diet. They were red flags for a body under extreme internal pressure. What made Dallas's death hit so hard wasn't just that he was young, talented, and popular. It was the fact that he represented a generation of bodybuilders walking a razor's edge, idolized for their incredible physiques while often silently battling the toll those physiques took on their health. His death sparked widespread discussions within the fitness community about health risks, drug use, and the culture of more is better. While the image of a giant choking on dinner might have made for a sensational headline, the truth was much more tragic. Dallas McCarver didn't just die from a freak accident. He died from a system that rewards pushing beyond limits, even when it comes at the cost of your life. His story stands as both a cautionary tale and a somber reminder that behind every perfectly sculpted body might be a heart struggling to keep up. In the quiet countryside of Newton County, Mississippi, tragedy arrived on a warm spring morning when the ordinary became devastating. On May 21, 2025, just after sunrise, a 55-year-old man from Chunky, Mississippi, set out for what should have been another routine day of work. Chunky is the kind of place where life moves a little slower. People know each other by name, and tractors are as common as pickup trucks. On this day, the man climbed aboard his tractor near the town of Hickory, likely planning to handle morning chores or travel a short distance along his property or local roadways. However, the familiar hum of the engine would be one of the last sounds he'd hear. At approximately 7 a.m., the Newton County Sheriff's Office received reports of a serious accident involving farm equipment. When authorities and emergency responders arrived on the scene, they discovered that the tractor had overturned, landing with devastating force. Newton County Coroner Rebecca Burton later confirmed that the man died at the scene due to injuries sustained when the tractor flipped. Details from the coroner's office revealed that the tractor rolled over in a wooded or sloped area, possibly where the ground was uneven or unstable. These are the kinds of conditions that can suddenly turn dangerous for heavy machinery. Tractors, despite their bulk, are surprisingly vulnerable to tipping, especially when traveling across inclined surfaces or making tight turns. Investigators noted that the tractor may have struck a rut or embankment before it toppled. It is not yet confirmed whether the tractor was equipped with a rollover protective structure, also known as a ROPS, which is a safety feature designed to shield the operator in such scenarios. Tragically, in this case, whatever safety measures may have been in place were not enough. The man was pinned beneath the weight of the vehicle, and by the time first responders reached the scene, there was nothing they could do to save him. The news spread quickly through the community, leaving friends, family, and neighbors in shock. In small towns like Chunky, a loss like this is not just felt by immediate relatives, it's felt by the entire community. People knew him not just as a tractor operator, but as a familiar face at church, a helper during harvest season, or a friendly neighbor always willing to lend a hand. The local authorities chose not to release his name immediately out of respect for the grieving family, a decision that underlines the closeness and compassion typical of these rural communities. As the investigation continued, safety advocates reminded the public that tractor rollovers remain one of the leading causes of death in agricultural settings. The tragic accident served as a painful reminder that even experienced operators are not immune to the hazards of farm machinery. Factors such as terrain, speed, equipment age, and lack of proper safety features all contribute to the risk. Newton County's emergency response teams, along with the Mississippi Highway Patrol, emphasized the importance of routine safety checks and the use of seat belts and rollover protection structures. These details, while technical, carry emotional weight in the wake of such a loss. They are not just safety guidelines. They are measures that could mean the difference between life and death. What began as just another morning ended in sorrow for a Mississippi family in a deeply connected rural town. Though the man's name may not appear in national headlines, his passing represents the silent dangers faced by thousands of agricultural workers across the country. It's a sobering story that highlights how easily the rhythm of daily life can be interrupted by tragedy and how important it is to value safety, community, and every single sunrise that we get to see. the lion park near. Johannesburg looked like paradise, wild, untouched, and teeming with life. For Catherine Chappell, a 29-year-old American with a fearless heart and a camera in her hand, it was exactly the kind of day she'd crossed oceans for. She wasn't just a tourist, she was a storyteller, a visual effects editor who had helped conjure dragons for Game of Thrones, chaos for Divergent, and battles for Captain America. But none of those digital illusions could prepare her for what waited just beyond the frame of her lens. She wasn't there just to see lions, she was there to help save them. A passionate conservationist, Catherine had come to South Africa with a mission to document the fight against poaching and give a voice to the silent vanishing of the wild. She'd arrived early, eager to soak in the beauty of the land before her volunteer work began. This was supposed to be a prelude, a warm-up, a moment of awe before the real work began. Instead, it became her final chapter. The safari vehicle crawled along the dusty track, the air thick with the scent of sun-baked earth and the distant call of wildlife. Catherine leaned forward, camera poised, eyes searching the horizon. Then, movement. From the golden grass, a lioness stepped out, silent, powerful, perfect. Her muscles rippled with each graceful step, her amber eyes unblinking. The rule was simple, repeated at every park gate, printed on every pamphlet. Do not open your windows, but wonder can make you forget. The need to capture the moment can override the instinct to protect it. Catherine rolled hers down. The lioness moved closer, not charging, just watching, calculating. She was near enough now that Catherine could see the rise and fall of her breath. The lens lifted. A shot was framed. Then everything snapped. Without a sound, the lioness lunged. An explosion of motion and raw power. The camera dropped. The world blurred. Jaws clamped down in a flash of teeth and fury. There was no time to scream, no time to recoil, just blood and silence. In the front seat, guide Pierre Pochiter grabbed for the lion, for Catherine, for anything, his hands torn open in the struggle. His heart, already weak, seized under the pressure. He collapsed behind the wheel, pain blooming through his chest as the scene spiraled into chaos. The attack lasted mere seconds, but in those seconds everything changed. By the time help arrived, it was far too late. Catherine lay motionless, her body still, her eyes closed to a world she had once sought to understand so deeply. Paramedics did what they could, but the wild is merciless when the line is crossed. There were no second chances. The news swept across continents. Her family shattered. Friends wept. Colleagues in Hollywood mourned. Some asked how it could happen, why it happened. But the truth is stark and sobering. The lion didn't act out of rage or malice. It acted on instinct. Catherine Chappell came to Africa with a heart full of purpose, a desire to tell stories that could spark change, stories rooted in truth. And now, heartbreakingly, her story became one, a cautionary tale, a reminder that beauty and danger walk hand in hand in the wild. That one mistake, one moment, can turn wonder into horror. At the Paradise Bali Gym, usually a place full of positivity, personal records, and post-workout smoothies, a tragic accident on July 15, 2023, turned everything silent. Justin Vicky, a well-known fitness coach, bodybuilder, and social media figure, was attempting a massive back squat with 210 kilograms, about 462 pounds, on his shoulders. Justin wasn't a beginner. He was the guy you'd see repping out heavy lifts with perfect form, offering advice to newcomers, and sharing motivational posts about health, discipline, and strength. He had built a reputation not just for his physique, but for his attitude, humble, passionate, and always striving for more. But on that day, the barbell had other plans. With one spotter behind him and the cameras rolling, Justin got under the bar and prepared to do what he'd done many times before. He took the weight off the rack and began to squat. At first, it looked solid, controlled descent, tight posture, but as he reached the bottom of the squat, something went wrong. He tried to push back up, but his body couldn't handle the load. His legs struggled, and the weight shifted forward. He lost balance, and in a terrifying instant, the barbell crashed down onto the back of his neck as he fell. The impact was brutal. His spotter, caught off guard, couldn't stop the bar's momentum. The force of it broke Justin's neck and caused severe trauma to nerves that control essential functions like breathing and heartbeat. Gym-goers nearby rushed to help. Emergency services were called, and he was taken to the hospital for surgery. Despite the best efforts of the medical team, Justin passed away the next day, on July 16th. He was only 33. The news spread fast, first across Bali, then across the entire fitness world. People were shocked. How could someone as experienced and careful as Justin meet such a fate in the gym? Tributes poured in online. Fellow lifters, fans, and friends described him as a beautiful soul, a true motivator, and a man who radiated kindness and strength. But with grief came questions. Why wasn't he using safety bars? Why was there only one spotter behind him during such a heavy lift? Why didn't he bail out sooner? The video of the incident, which later circulated online, sparked intense debates. Fitness experts pointed out that during a back squat that heavy, it's essential to have side spotters or perform the lift inside a squat rack with safety pins in place. Others talked about the dangers of ego lifting, when lifters push beyond their limits for the sake of achievement, content, or pride. Justin himself had once said that the squat is dangerous as hell if not done correctly. It's haunting now to think those words came from the very person who would fall victim to it. His death became more than just a tragedy. It became a powerful reminder of how quickly things can go wrong in the gym, even for the strongest and most experienced athletes. Paradise Bali Gym posted a heartfelt message mourning the loss of their brother, friend, and inspiration. They promised to honor his legacy by continuing to promote safety and support within the fitness community. Justin Vicky's story now lives on, not just in memories or Instagram posts, but as a lesson etched into the weights and walls of gyms everywhere. Respect the lift, respect your body, and never take safety for granted because no matter how strong you are, gravity always wins. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon in Iowa County, Wisconsin, the kind of day when the countryside feels almost timeless. The sky was clear, the breeze was light, and somewhere in the town of Eden, 71-year-old John Lee O'Flaherty was doing something he had probably done countless times before, working on his land with a tractor. A resident of Janesville, Lee was experienced and familiar with rural life, and like many others who live off or care for the land, he trusted his equipment and knew his terrain. But even for the most seasoned operators, the land can be unpredictable. That afternoon, Lee was mowing a steep hillside, likely trying to take care of some overgrowth or keep the property in good condition. But something went wrong, terribly wrong. The tractor, likely on uneven or slippery ground, began to lose its footing. It slid down the hill, rapidly picking up momentum. Before Lee could react, the tractor overturned in a violent roll and pinned him beneath its massive weight. It was a chilling moment, the kind that freezes time. Emergency services were called immediately, and rescue teams rushed to the scene. But by the time they arrived, the damage had already been done. Lee was found underneath the tractor with no signs of life. First responders pronounced him dead at the scene. The Iowa County Sheriff's Office later released his identity and confirmed what had happened: a tragic farming accident on a quiet piece of land. This wasn't just a freak incident. It was a stark reminder of how dangerous heavy machinery can be, especially on steep or unstable ground. Tractors, while vital tools in agriculture, can become deadly in a matter of seconds. Lee's death sent ripples through the local community. Friends, neighbors, and loved ones mourned the loss of a man who had simply been doing what he loved. The sheriff's office asked for privacy for the family, and rightfully so. They were facing a sudden, heartbreaking loss that no one could have seen coming. Stories like this often go unnoticed outside of rural towns, but they matter deeply. They remind us that behind every accident is a real person, a family, a story that ended too soon. Lee O'Flaherty wasn't just a statistic. He was someone's father, friend, maybe even a grandfather, and above all, someone who didn't deserve such a fate. His passing stands as a somber testament to the risks that come with rural labor and to the importance of safety, caution, and respect for the machines we operate. Whether mowing a lawn, baling hay, or clearing brush, the equipment we use carries great power, and when paired with treacherous terrain, the results can be devastating. Lee's story is one of quiet resilience, of doing the work that matters, and of a life remembered not for how it ended, but for the community and care that surrounded it. His legacy will live on as both a cautionary tale and a heartfelt tribute to those who toil in the fields and hills of small-town America. The Namibian night was still, the kind of stillness that makes every sound feel louder, every shadow deeper. The stars hung low and bright above the desert, casting a soft light over the Hohenib River Valley, where silence cloaks everything in illusion. It was the kind of night that seems timeless. Beautiful, yes, but never truly safe. Bernd Kebbel, a 59-year-old German businessman known for his success and generosity, stepped out of his luxury tent near the Skeleton Coast. It was just a brief moment. He was going to use the toilet. His wife and their friends remained inside, tucked beneath canvas and calm, unaware that just meters away, something had already begun to stir in the dark. The lioness was already there. Maybe she had been watching for hours, her golden coat blending into the rock and brush. her paws silent on the sand. She moved like a whisper across the earth, drawn in by instinct and opportunity. No roar, no sound, just movement, focused and final. The moment he stepped out, she pounced. There was no time for a scream, no chance to run. Her weight slammed into him, pinning him down. Her jaws, massive and unrelenting, closed fast. By the time the others heard the commotion and burst out of their tents, shouting, scrambling, throwing whatever they could to scare the animal away, it was already too late. Bernd Kebbel was dead. His body lay still beneath the stars as the lioness vanished back into the wild. The silence returned, but it wasn't the same. This time it carried with it a kind of horror that hangs in the air and won't let go. Officials arrived quickly. Police surveyed the site. The Ministry of Environment and Tourism launched an investigation. A report was promised, statements were taken, condolences offered, but none of it could rewrite what had just happened. None of it could give that moment back. Bernd wasn't just another tourist. He had once owned Namibia's off-road center, a supplier of expedition gear and safari accessories, and had spent years supporting conservation work. He understood the wild, respected it. He had given to the land that, in the end, took him. And then, just 2 days later, the lioness was found and euthanized. The decision was swift. Authorities deemed her a continuing threat, not just to tourists, but to the surrounding communities. She had crossed the line from wild to dangerous, they said. But had she? Or had she simply done what lions have always done, seized an opportunity in a land that gives them fewer and fewer? In this harsh corner of northwest Namibia, desert-adapted lions are ghosts on the sand. Only around 60 adults remained as of last year, their numbers dwindling with the prey they rely on and the human encroachment they can't avoid. Drought has stolen their food. Roads have carved through their silence. Fear has met them head-on. Bernd Kebbel was a man who believed in nature's raw beauty, who spent his life exploring it, equipping others to do the same. He knew the risks, but no one expects that moment. No one imagines that stepping out under the stars could be their last breath. This wasn't just a tragic accident, it was a collision between the human desire for connection with the wild and the wild's unforgiving reality. Because in places like Namibia, the line between wonder and danger is invisible. And when it's crossed, there are no warnings, only silence, teeth, and what's left behind. Greg Plitt wasn't just a fitness model, he was a force of nature, a chiseled symbol of discipline, drive, and daredevil confidence. A West Point graduate and former Army Ranger, Greg made his way into the fitness world like a hurricane, landing over 200 magazine covers, starring in motivational workout videos, and becoming a household name for anyone chasing that beast mode lifestyle. But behind the muscle and military-grade intensity was a man who constantly pushed the limits, both physically and mentally. And on January 17, 2015, that tendency to push a little too far ended in a heartbreaking tragedy. Greg was filming a promotional video for a new energy drink on active train tracks in Burbank, California. No permits, no warning signs, just Greg and a few crew members shooting what was meant to be a dramatic sequence of him running on the tracks, supposedly to symbolize power, speed, and fearlessness. He'd done similar videos before, filming in extreme conditions or challenging environments to add that raw, unfiltered edge to his motivational brand. But this time, things took a fatal turn. As he ran between the rails, a southbound Metrolink train approached at approximately 60 miles per hour. The train engineer immediately saw him, sounded the horn, and slammed the brakes. But Greg didn't move. It wasn't suicide. Witnesses and investigators agreed he likely believed the train was on a different set of tracks, or assumed he had enough time to get clear. Unfortunately, that assumption proved deadly. The incident occurred just north of the Burbank Metrolink station, in an area that clearly prohibited trespassing. Authorities later confirmed that neither Greg nor his team had requested filming permits from Metrolink or the city. In fact, Metrolink has a strict policy for any commercial or private filming near their tracks, requiring safety officers, flaggers, and permission from their office to ensure that exactly this kind of tragedy doesn't happen. But in a moment driven by ambition and cinematic vision, that safety step was skipped. Investigators reported that Greg may have been trying to film a head-on action shot with the train in the background, possibly misjudging its distance or speed. The train, weighing hundreds of tons and traveling at high velocity, had no chance of stopping in time. Greg was struck and killed instantly. His body was reportedly thrown from the tracks, and paramedics at the scene pronounced him dead shortly after. It shocked not only the fitness community, but the entire country. This wasn't just a tragic death, it was a preventable one. In the days following his passing, tributes poured in. Fans, fellow bodybuilders, veterans, and actors all expressed sorrow at the loss of someone who had motivated millions. Greg wasn't just a model. He was a mentor, a motivator, and a guy who genuinely believed in helping others achieve their highest potential. But his death sparked a louder conversation about safety in filming, especially in unofficial or guerrilla-style shoots. The parallels to other film-related tragedies, such as the Midnight Rider incident that killed camera assistant Sarah Jones, became painfully apparent. Industry professionals and fitness influencers alike began calling for stricter adherence to safety regulations, even in self-produced content. Because no shot is worth a life, Greg Plitt lived like a superhero. But his tragic end reminded everyone that even heroes are bound by the laws of nature and the rules of safety. His legacy continues to inspire, but also serves as a sobering reminder that when you walk too close to the edge, make sure it doesn't lead to a set of live tracks. It was a regular Thursday afternoon out on the peaceful plains of South Dakota, birds chirping, tractors humming, and ditches being trimmed like suburban hedges before a BBQ. But somewhere southeast of Aberdeen, things took a sudden and tragic turn. Meet 74-year-old Ronald Allen Glugla, a seasoned local with enough experience on a farmall tractor to make John Deere jealous. On May 1st, 2025, Ron was out doing what he probably did every spring, mowing the ditches. The man was riding a classic red farmall with a belly mower attached, probably with a baseball cap on, minding his own business along 138th Street. Now, this wasn't a flat country road. No, sir. It was a sloped, sneaky stretch, one of those deceptive ditches that look manageable until you tilt just a little too far. Around 2:42 p.m., while working that steep incline like a pro landscaper, the tractor slipped and rolled. We're talking a full-on rollover, not just a tip, but a tragic tumble that ended up being fatal. Ron wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Maybe because in the old days, tractors didn't even have them. Unfortunately, when the machine flipped, he didn't stand a chance. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, probably expecting a routine rescue, only to find it was already too late. Ron was pronounced dead at the scene, right there on the side of the rural road he had likely driven 1,000 times before. The South Dakota Highway Patrol got on the case immediately. Their report, filed faster than a South Dakota blizzard rolls in, confirmed it was a single-vehicle crash, just the tractor, the ditch, and a heartbreaking accident. The vehicle had one job, mow grass. But on that day, gravity and slope had other plans. It's worth pointing out that tractors aren't the harmless, clunky machines they look like, especially not on slopes. They're basically 4,000-pound tipping hazards, and even with slow speeds, they can be deadly. The patrol's investigation remains ongoing, but initial findings suggest that had a seatbelt or rollover protection structure been in place or used properly, the outcome might have been different. This wasn't just a freak accident. It was an unfortunate reminder of how dangerous everyday farming tasks can be, even for experienced hands. What's truly tragic is how ordinary this scene must have looked at first. One man, one tractor, some long grass. It could have been any grandpa, any farmer, just handling business on the land. But rural roads come with their own dangers, and Ronald's death was a chilling example. Locals were stunned. Aberdeen isn't exactly a hotbed of high drama, and everyone in a 50-mile radius probably either knew Ron or knew someone who did. He was described as a community staple, a guy who'd give you advice on crops, probably wave from his tractor as he passed by. The kind of man you'd expect to live forever through sheer grit and stubbornness, and in a way he kind of will. His passing sent ripples through the farming community, reminding everyone to take tractor safety seriously. Wear that seatbelt. Avoid steep ditches. Respect the machine, even if you've driven it since the Nixon administration. Tractors might not have airbags or autopilot, but they've got enough torque to flip your world, literally. So let Ron's story be a heartfelt, albeit heartbreaking lesson to every rural worker out there. Whether you're 24 or 74, keep your head on a swivel and your tires on the flat, because out there in the quiet fields of South Dakota, even a humble ditch can become the final destination. Quinn Swales, a 40-year-old British safari guide with a quiet strength and deep reverence for the wild, that moment came in the silent, sunlit stillness of Zimbabwe's Hwange National Park. Quinn had done this countless times, leading groups on foot, teaching them to read the signs written in the earth and leaves, tracking lions not with fear, but with understanding. He knew these lands like the lines on his palms. He trusted them, and that morning, his tourists followed him through the hush of the savannah, not realizing they were steps away from the edge of something unforgiving. Then it happened. From the tall grass, a blur, a sudden unstoppable force, a massive male lion exploded into view. He stepped forward. In that breathless moment, Quinn Swales made a choice only the brave can make. He placed his body between the charging lion and the people he had vowed to protect. With only his voice, his presence, and every ounce of his knowledge, he tried to stop the inevitable. He did everything he could to draw the lion's wrath to himself and away from them, and it worked. The lion veered toward him, away from the group, but the cost was unimaginable. It happened so fast. Claws tore flesh, jaws clamped down, blood splashed across the grass. The tourists, too stunned to scream, could only watch as the man who had just moments ago led them calmly through the wilderness was now locked in a fatal struggle against nature's rawest violence. He never stood a chance. By the time help arrived, it was already too late. Quinn lay crumpled in the dirt, his body broken but his mission fulfilled. Not a single tourist had been harmed. He had bought their lives with his own. News of his death hit hard, and it hit globally. Not just because a man had died, but because this man had lived so intentionally. He had once been a pilot, soaring above the world, but gave it up to be on the ground among the wild things he loved. He didn't just guide people. He taught them to feel the wild, to understand its rhythm, its wonder, its danger. Friends, family, and strangers alike mourned him. His fellow rangers were gutted. Tourists who had once walked behind him through the bush couldn't believe it. Social media flooded with memories of his calm voice, his infectious passion, his quiet bravery. And then came the cruel twist. Only weeks before Quinn's death, Hwange National Park had already been in the global spotlight because of another lion, one whose name had become legend, Cecil, the black-maned king who roamed the park as if it were his personal throne. He had been part of an Oxford research study, tracked, beloved, protected, until he wasn't. Cecil had been lured out of the safe zone by an American dentist named Walter Palmer, lured, wounded with a bow, then stalked for 40 long hours before the final shot ended him. The outcry was massive, international, but it didn't bring Cecil back. What few knew was that Quinn Swales had admired that lion. He had taken pictures of him, even used one as his Facebook cover photo. And now, fate had dealt its cruelest hand. Quinn, a defender of lions, had died at the claws of one, but not out of irony, out of instinct. That's the part people always forget. Lions don't know legacies. They don't know heroes. They know hunger, territory, survival. The lion that killed Quinn wasn't evil. It was wild. Franco Columbu was more than just a bodybuilding legend. He was a symbol of strength, discipline, and timeless friendship. Born in Sardinia in 1941, he rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most respected names in the world of fitness. He was small in stature, but built like a tank, with a smile that made him approachable even as he broke powerlifting records. Over the years, he earned titles like Mr. Olympia in 1976 and 1981, competed in the inaugural World's Strongest Man contest, and worked as a chiropractor and actor. But beyond the trophies and muscle, Franco was perhaps best known as the lifelong best friend and training partner of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Their bond was forged in iron, literally, on gym floors, under heavy barbells, and during early morning runs that helped define the golden era of bodybuilding. Arnold once described Franco as not only his closest friend, but as a brother, someone who had been by his side through decades of triumph, failure, and life-changing success. Tragically, on August 30th, 2019, Franco's remarkable life came to an unexpected and heartbreaking end. He had returned to Sardinia to enjoy a vacation in the town of San Teodoro. That morning, he completed a light workout and reportedly participated in a local festival where he interacted with locals, laughed, and took photos with fans. Later in the early afternoon, he decided to take a swim in the crystal-clear Mediterranean waters. It was a warm, calm day, by all accounts, perfect for a dip. However, while swimming offshore, Franco began to experience severe chest pain. Witnesses say he appeared to struggle suddenly, showing signs of distress. Emergency services were called immediately, and a helicopter was dispatched to the beach. Lifeguards and paramedics rushed to help and pulled him from the water, where resuscitation attempts began right away. He was airlifted to the John Paul II Hospital in Olbia, but despite efforts during the flight and at the hospital, he was declared dead shortly after arrival. The cause was determined to be a heart attack, which likely occurred mid-swim, causing him to lose consciousness and drown before help could reach him. It was a swift and silent tragedy that caught everyone off guard. He had lived with humility, treated people with kindness, and remained passionate about health and fitness well into his later years. Arnold Schwarzenegger, visibly shaken by the loss, shared a heartfelt tribute, calling Franco his partner in crime and the person he trusted most in the world. "I love you, Franco," he wrote. "I know I will see you again." His funeral, held in his hometown of Olalai, was filled with friends, family, and admirers who came to pay their respects to a man who had never forgotten his roots. A second memorial was later held in Los Angeles, a city where Franco had trained, healed, and inspired thousands. Even in death, his influence didn't fade. It lingered in the gyms he helped shape, in the stories told by bodybuilders he mentored, and in the legacy of a man who proved that heart, not just muscle, is what makes a legend. Franco Columbu's life was extraordinary, but his passing was a quiet, sobering reminder that even the strongest among us are still human. He died doing what he loved, after a workout in the water, in the sunlit beauty of his homeland, in a way that feels fitting, a warrior at peace. The tragic death of Nishu Deshwal is one of those stories that hits hard, not just because of how sudden and shocking it was, but because of what it represents in today's social media-driven world. At just 22 years old, Nishu had made a name for himself as the Tractor Tokan King across YouTube and Instagram, gathering over 1 million followers who admired his daring stunts and larger-than-life attitude. Coming from Kurad village near Panipat, India, Nishu wasn't just another content creator. He was known in his community as a confident young man with a flair for mechanics and a love for tractors. But what started as an entertaining persona on the internet took a devastating turn in February 2024. During the filming of a tractor wheelie stunt near the Yamuna riverbank, Nishu attempted to lift the front of his tractor into the air while seated at the wheel, something he had done many times before. But this time, the terrain worked against him. The rear wheels of the tractor began to sink into the soft, unstable sand. Within moments, the heavy machine lost its balance and tipped backward with brutal force, crushing Nishu beneath the front structure and steering column. He died instantly, in front of the very friends who were recording the stunt. News of his death spread quickly, both in Panipat and online, and tributes began pouring in. But so did the difficult conversations. Why was there no safety equipment? Why perform a dangerous stunt in such an unpredictable location? And perhaps most importantly, why has online validation become so closely tied to increasingly risky behavior? For someone like Nishu, who had a 6-month-old son and a growing following, the pressure to constantly outdo his previous stunts may have felt immense. Social media, after all, rewards the extreme with bigger risks, more views, and more fame. But there's a fine line between entertainment and recklessness, and this incident crossed it in the most tragic way possible. Experts later pointed out that Nishu's tractor lacked proper rollover protection, no roll bar, no safety cage, nothing to keep the driver secure in case of a flip. And while he was experienced and skilled, the physics of heavy machinery on loose soil is a dangerous game, even for professionals. This wasn't an isolated case either. Similar fatal accidents involving tractor stunts had been reported in Punjab and other regions, prompting local governments to ban such displays at public events. Unfortunately, regulations often come too late, after lives are lost, not before. In the aftermath of Nishu's passing, many of his older stunt videos resurfaced online, gaining even more traction. Some viewers mourned his loss, while others warned against glorifying these kinds of acts. His death sparked a national conversation about safety awareness, the influence of digital fame, and the need for stricter guidelines around dangerous content. It became a moment of reflection not just for creators, but for audiences as well. Are we encouraging risky behavior by giving it so much attention? Do platforms have a responsibility to filter content that promotes unsafe actions? Nishu Deshwal's story is not just about a stunt gone wrong. It's about the fine line between talent and tragedy, the seductive pull of viral fame, and the irreplaceable cost of a young life lost too soon. It reminds us that no number of likes or views is worth dying for, and that behind every thrilling video, there's a real person with a family, a future, and a life that should never be reduced to a cautionary tale. It was meant to be the kind of afternoon you remember forever, the kind you tell stories about for years. A sun-soaked drive through South Africa's Lion Park. A car rolling slowly through the golden sprawl of Bushveld. Windows down, cameras raised, hearts beating a little faster as lions roamed freely just meters away. For one 22-year-old American tourist and her male companion, it felt like stepping into a dream. The lions moved like shadows, silent, majestic, ancient. The thrill of being so close to something so powerful was intoxicating. 1 second, you're holding your breath to capture the perfect photo. The next, you're face to face with nature at its most unforgiving. She never saw it coming. The lioness appeared from the grass, golden coat glinting under the sun, her eyes locked on the vehicle. She didn't roar, she didn't growl, just approached, smooth, deliberate, calm. For a heartbeat, everything was still, and then it wasn't. In a blur of motion, the lioness lunged, claws scraped against metal. Massive jaws snapped through the open passenger window like a nightmare tearing through the veil of safety. There was no warning, no time to scream, no time to hit the button to roll the glass back up. In an instant, the young woman was gone. From the seat beside her companion to the crushing grip of the wild, dragged half from the vehicle, her body twisted violently by the raw power of the predator. Her companion shouted, grabbed, fought, helpless against muscle and instinct honed by millennia. Park staff raced toward the scene, but seconds matter in the wild, and by the time help arrived, the damage had been done. Blood soaked the car seat. The cameras were forgotten. The silence that followed was the kind that only comes after something irreversible. She died before paramedics could even try to save her. The man survived, wounded, shaken, still alive. But how do you process something like that? One moment, they were side by side, wrapped in the thrill of adventure. The next, she was gone forever, taken by the very wildness they'd come to witness. Authorities opened an investigation, as they always do when humans are reminded that they're not in control out here. A police spokesman called it an unnatural death, as though anything about being dragged from your car by a lion could ever feel natural. But this wasn't the first time. Lion Park was famous for letting guests get close. Too close. Just months before, an Australian tourist had been bitten in the leg for lowering his window. A 13-year-old boy had been attacked by a cheetah after slipping through a fence. Every incident carried the same warnings, repeated like a chant. Keep your windows up. Stay inside the vehicle. Don't forget where you are. But warnings blur when the line between thrill and danger feels so thin, when lions seem calm, when everything feels under control, until it isn't. The fate of the lioness remained unknown. Would she be relocated, killed, kept behind barriers? No one said for sure. After all, she hadn't broken any rules. She was the rule. She followed the only law the wild has ever known. Survival, instinct, dominance. There was no villain here, just a moment. A choice, a rule ignored, and a life ended. That's the danger of the wild. It doesn't ask for your trust. It doesn't offer second chances. And when it reaches back, it does so without mercy. In the world of competitive bodybuilding, few young athletes rise as quickly and brightly as Sfiso Lungalo Tabete did. Hailing from South Africa, Sfiso wasn't just another hopeful in the gym. He was a national champion with global recognition. In 2016, he won the prestigious IFBB Junior World Championship in the Dominican Republic, placing himself firmly on the map as a promising figure in the international bodybuilding scene. His performances were powerful, his physique impressive, and his passion for the sport unmistakable. But in a tragic turn of events in 2017, Sfiso's life was cut heartbreakingly short in front of a live audience during what should have been another moment of celebration in his rising career. The incident took place at a bodybuilding event in Umlazi, KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Sfiso was a local favorite, and his entrance was highly anticipated. Known not just for his strength, but also for his flair, he often kicked off his appearances with a signature backflip, a move that combined athleticism with showmanship. On this particular day, he walked out onto the stage wearing socks, perhaps not realizing the risk they posed on the slick floor. As the crowd cheered and cameras rolled, he prepared for his usual flip. But as he launched into the air, something went terribly wrong. Instead of completing the rotation and landing on his feet, Sfiso under-rotated and came crashing down on the back of his neck. What followed was a scene of sudden confusion and horror. At first, many in the crowd believed it was part of the performance, or that he would get up and brush it off, as athletes often do. But seconds passed and Sfiso lay motionless. Panic set in as officials rushed to his side. It quickly became clear that this was a serious injury. He was immediately transported to a nearby hospital, but the damage was catastrophic. Sfiso had broken his neck during the fall, suffering a fatal cervical spine injury. Despite medical efforts, he was pronounced dead shortly after. He was just 23 years old. The bodybuilding community, both in South Africa and internationally, was shaken. Messages of grief and disbelief poured in across social media. Wayne Price, president of Bodybuilding South Africa, later commented that the accident likely occurred because of the socks Sfiso had been wearing. which may have caused him to slip and fail to gain the necessary momentum. It was a painful reminder of how even the most confident and physically prepared athletes can fall victim to sudden, unpredictable dangers, especially when performance and aesthetics are pushed to the limit. What made Sfiso's passing even more heartbreaking was the fact that it was caught on camera. The footage quickly circulated online, with many calling for its removal out of respect for his family and memory. The video served as a stark and uncomfortable reminder of how quickly things can go wrong, even in a moment meant to inspire and impress. Sfiso wasn't just a bodybuilder, he was a young man full of ambition, potential, and heart. His tragic death left a void in the sport and a lasting message about the importance of caution, safety, and awareness, even in environments driven by performance and spectacle. Though his time on this earth was short, Sfiso Lungalo Tabete's dedication and spirit remain etched in the memories of fans, athletes, and all who saw his potential. His story is no longer just one of triumph, but also of tragedy and of the fragile line that separates both.